Boom, we're live. All right. There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Vagabond Dog Industry Chats. This week's guest, incredible longtime friend of our gang, Chris Floyd.
Yeah,
Hello, how are you doing, dude?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
The Vagabond Core is screaming in chat. They're very excited to see you. Jake says hi. Jane says hi.
Good.
Let's see. Superliminal is a video game. First person puzzle game about perspective. We played it.
Sure.
We played it in the mornings here. Where you are very frequently having to challenge your mind with interesting puzzles that deal with the nature of objects at different sizes based on their relative perspective to yours. Am I doing a good job of explaining this game? So it's a hard game, I think, to explain without
It is.
showing a person an image or something like that.
It is. One of our early things about it was that it was a game that you couldn't get until you played it. Like you can't, even if you watch it, you don't really get what's happening. It's very hard to communicate it to people, which is really good for marketing.
Right. Yeah, like that there are games absolutely that have that. You know what, like I was gonna use the word problem, but I also think that's like, ultimately what makes something a game like that special is that uniqueness, right? Like, I could tell you that Little Red Riding Hood is a story about a girl who goes into the woods and almost gets eaten by a wolf or whatever.
Right.
And you can be like, oh, okay, I get it, right? And then you don't need to enjoy it.
Sure. Yeah. I get that.
I think music is probably the only other thing where it's like I can't really like describe an album to you super well, like apart from like giving it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyway, Superliminal is absolutely one of those games that is best enjoyed, experienced. And
Also, best if you go in blind, which is even better for marketing. Don't look at anything to do with the game.
just
listen to someone tell you it's good, and then go see what you think.
So I mean, okay, then I want to ask, like, how did you onboard into this project? What was your, first of all, I guess let's go over the introduction to these stuff. What is your
Sure.
role on the project, and like how did you onboard into the project? Was it sight unseen? Did you see a demo? Like,
What happened?
what happened?
What happened? As I'm sure you know well, there's many different ways to tell this story.
Uh-oh.
It's longer, some are longer than others, but
We got an hour, so
the so the ins and outs are that I think in about 2014, Polygon.com, everyone's favorite 3D art asset website,
Turtle Squid alternative.
they posted the video of what was then known as Museum of Simulation Technology. And everybody was like, whoa, what is this game? It's so cool. And I thought, oh, this game is very cool. And then fast forward about 2 years, I think, and one of my friends and office mates, Logan Feith, acclaimed designer of perspective and four-sided fantasy, he ended up doing like a week-long video game play date with Albert, who was making the game, where Albert came up from, I think he was in San Francisco at that point, came up to Seattle for a week, and they worked together, and then it turned out they were working together longer term, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, and he moved to Seattle, and so we got to know each other, and they were both working out of the office that I run up here. And then in 2018, I think it was in about February of that year, something like that, I watched them. They'd spent about pretty much the entirety of 2017 not doing nothing, doing lots of work that wasn't getting anywhere, wasn't really like advancing things. Again, I'm sure you know all about that. Everyone has had
Thanks,
that
bro.
moment. Yes. And I can't remember how it came up exactly, but I called Albert over to my house one night and I kind of sat him down and said, "Listen, I don't I don't know what's going on, but like what you have is a really, really cool thing, and I'm very scared that you're going to lose it. That like either the project's going to get canceled or you're going to like run out of money and like all kinds of bad things could happen." And so I offered to help him for a month for free and said, I just want to help you get this thing back online. And if it's a total mess, that's fine. We can part ways, but I think I can fix it. And then fast forward a year and a half or whatever, and we'd launched the game. It was exclusive on the Epic Game Store. We made tens of dollars, and now I'm able to drink Trader Joe's tea almost anytime I like.
That's good.
Yeah,
the
so
fruits speak for themselves.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, the team was suffering from that problem that you see so much, where everyone is too close to the project, and particularly Albert. I mean, he'd been working on it at that point for I think something like 5 or 6 years, and so he was just he was unable to see it properly, right? Like you spend that much time with something, it just takes over your brain in a bad way. And the rest of the team were sort of deferring to him as the de facto owner and weren't really sure what to do, and so everyone was kind of just like lost in this miasma stuff. And I just came in and was like, let's just make it. Like, what is it? Let's just make that game. There's a really good you ever seen the No Clip videos by Danny O'Dwyer, fellow Irishman Danny O'Dwyer?
I know the designer, but I don't know
Well, anyway, he has a video with Hugo Martin from id, who came in to save what was Doom 4 and turned it into Doom 2016. And I think his description of it was really good, where he's basically like, you sit down and say, what is this game supposed to be? And then just make that game. Like, stop doing everything else. Stop trying to figure out what it could do or where it could go. Just go, what is that thing? And let's just make that thing instead, right? And so that was a lot of my I don't know, my like role. I mean, when you're such a small team, everyone's doing a bit of everything, but I pretty much acted as the advocate for the game. And I was basically like, if Superliminal were in this room, what would it say about this decision, right? And that's kind of how we got things going. Write the story and put all the levels together. I mean, when I joined, it was functionally just a set of pretty awesome puzzles. Without much connective tissue at all. So it was a big wild ride. I still have old builds of the game that are fun to look back on. You're just like, man, can't believe the game looked like this once.
So then, like, I mean, a lot of projects, enter that like very confusing nebulous state of like it's definitely something. We've put too much in to like throw it away. And is it really as simple as being like, okay, we're time to wrap it up? I mean, like I know in our case we had given ourselves, a very hard stopping point to the shenanigans at some point that would lead to our release. A lot of developers I know avoid the release date announcement forever.
Yeah, I'm totally on the other side. I think you should announce the release date before you announce your game.
But before you start. I no joke. I mean, speaking of Doom, that's how Doom was made. The OG Doom, John Romero literally wrote a press release like 2 days before Christmas or something like that, saying,
that's right. Yes,
right.
That is
he
right.
sent a press release to everybody, being like, "We're making the most amazing game of all time." Like Carmack had like just barely gotten the 3D maze shit working or whatever. And then Romero sends out this press release saying, we're going to make the greatest game of all time, and it's called Doom, and it's going to have online multiplayer, and it's going to have, and it's coming out this date. And like they had done nothing.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's the greatest game of all time, or one of them.
And that's, I mean, it helps, right? Because it's just, I mean, I think the biggest problem with the thing that I think people maybe don't necessarily understand about video games versus something like movies is like movies are super, super planned out. Like very, very little realistically will change from the moment you start filming to the moment you end. Like if the whole thing
Mm,
is like a project that is just like today we shoot this, and this, right? And some stuff might change later, but not much because you can't reshoot. And when you're making a game, I mean, you can just change anything at any time, and it's sort of by definition incredibly amorphous. So it's very difficult to remain uh like I can't think of a non-silly way to say it, but like to remain like honest and true to the thing. Like
mm,
you have to get to know what it is that you're making, and then you have to do that and not like question what it is. Like you can't be like, well, maybe we could do this other thing too. You have to be like, no, that wouldn't happen in this, so like we're not doing that. Like that doesn't feel like it fits. If someone else was making this, they wouldn't do that, you know?
right.
And that's why I like that kind of thing of like you sort of bring the the game and the project and the world kind of becomes this other team member. Um, I think Chris and Tyler from Darkest Dungeon described it as the Batman versus Bruce Wayne thing. Have you seen or heard about that? Where
No.
they were saying like it's like a slight tangent, but they were saying like Bruce Wayne is a creative director, right? Bruce Wayne is someone who is a human being. He's fallible. He's open to influence. Like stuff can come up and he'll be like, "Oh my god, like, you know, I saw this painting the other day and thought we should totally put that, like that should be the kind of thing we do in the game." Like that's what a creative director does, right? They just get like they're kind of sponging everything all the time. Um Creative direction is Batman. It is completely fixed. It knows exactly what it is. It never changes. You know exactly what you're getting going in, right? Like, and your job as a creative director is to always defer to that. Like, you
Right.
don't you don't make that. It tells you what to do, right? And I think that's really hard. And I think a lot of people struggle with kind of wanting to like keep tweaking and changing things and like really like put a mark on things sometimes. And I think a lot of the time the wiser move is to sort of do the opposite and sort of think, what is the truth of this object, and
Right.
let's do that thing instead of trying to make your version of it.
I find myself in the trap of having designed my biggest games are designed in a fashion that allow for infinite content, and not just that, but content that can be generated very easily.
Yeah,
It really doesn't take much for me to add something, and so when I have a whim, I can execute upon it in minutes,
yeah,
and it's just there, and then I can keep doing that forever.
yeah,
Um, as I have continued to do after release, I have probably put out, I think we're almost at 100 title updates for Sometimes Always Monsters already, which
yeah,
just has more and more and more and more content because there's, I don't have anybody to tell me no, and I don't have any functional reason not to, and it's not like it's difficult. Um,
yeah.
and I
I think
want to know
Valve,
how to get good at this. This
Val,
thing you speak of,
yeah,
control.
Valve used to have. I think it's gone now. They've taken it away from wherever they posted it. It used to be some post that was somewhere on their Steamworks docs or somewhere that was basically just like talked about the concept of a shipping lead. Um, which I don't know. I assume they must have got this from Microsoft because a bunch of them were all ex-Microsoft people.
Hmm.
But um, the shipping lead is like the person who is in charge of making all the builds and yada yada yada. And at a certain point, you make a decision that the shipping lead now has to approve every single thing that gets added. So if anyone has a cool idea, that's fine. You know, they can do the work and push the commit and put it into the project. But the shipping lead doesn't have to accept it. Like they can just leave it there and go, cool, this is good, but we're not doing it. Um, and I think the thing that can be really tough to wrestle with is like that thing you mentioned of like not just like random whimsical little ideas you want to put into the game, but there's also like I'm sure right now off the top of your head you can think of like 50 stupid little problems with Sometimes Always Monsters that you want to fix.
I mean, what are you implying?
And
um,
the thing we had to wrestle with a lot in the team was like me trying to communicate to everyone that the goal the goal can't be to make it like perfect because it's never going to happen.
mhm.
Oh, sorry. and to understand that because something is quick and easy does not make it valid,
Right.
right? Like it has to be like we're currently in the middle of finishing a major feature update that's going to hopefully land tomorrow. F's in the chat if we don't do it. But we had a conversation this morning where there was like a big list of work and we are going down the list, and I said, listen, does any of this stuff stop somebody from using it? Like, what's
Right.
going to happen, right? And from that, the list of 30 things was down to 2, right? And it was like, okay, let's
Mm.
fix those 2 things, and then the rest we can figure out. And again, infinite time, we can figure out all this stuff later. But if we keep working on little tiny fixes, 0 people will play this feature. So how do we get
Right.
past 0, right? that's
Right.
that's kind of the way I like to look at it.
Um, it's very interesting to hear about the processes you bring in and checks and balances in terms of talking about Valve's production cycle with the shipping lead, your role on Superliminal coming in kind of like later into the project after a couple
Yeah.
years.
Mm-hmm.
How, I mean, do you think it's essential to have extra people being that force? Do you think it is reasonable to expect a solo indie developer to bring that level of discipline and control? I mean, there are definitely cases visible
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
games, but I mean, is it worth that, or do you think it's just better to bring in other people?
Um, my personal ethos on pretty much any creative project in any industry is if there's someone who's good at this thing more than I am, like let's get that person to do
Right.
that thing. And that's why I don't know how to do anything because all I do is keep pushing it out to other people. But that's the way I look at it. I mean, I think like you said, there's plenty of people. Let's not use a weasel word. There are people in the industry who are very, very good at doing a lot of different things,
Mhm.
and most people are not like those people,
Right.
right? Like I think there's a good little maxim I heard once. Uh, what was it? Oh, you. So like again, assuming like regular level intelligence, time to learn, yada yada yada. You can do anything that you want to do, but
Mhm.
you can't do everything. So you have to choose the things you're going to do, right? And I think the best way that you can run a team, best way I like to work, at least personally, is everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing and they get to fully focus on the thing that they are really good at. Like
Right.
in the run up to our recent Steam launch, which was just about a month ago, um, I think for the last week, probably week or, yeah, I think about last week, um, I just stopped touching the engine. Like we had like a Monday stand up, and I said, listen, as of today, I'm not doing any more design fixes or changes to anything because there's way more useful stuff that I can do outside of this. Like I have to go talk to Steam and make sure that we're all good with that stuff and get our like soundtrack all packaged up and all this kind of all this like boring work, right? But it's all the stuff that people are really going to see, and like, whether you when you move this block from here to here, it's like it's great for you, but it
Right.
doesn't really matter, right? So I think it's really hard, especially for creative. It's not really creatives because I think everyone's pretty creative, but I think here's the way I look at it. I think if you own a project and you're working on the project and you're truly honest about the fact that you want it to do well and be good, then you should do whatever it will take to make that happen. And the best way to do that is to kind of hire a babysitter who can
Right.
make it come out, right? Because like you say, I mean it's very easy and super tempting and super duper duper fun to just noodle on things forever. Like it's
Yeah.
great. Like, there's no one I know who gets really passionate about something and is like, oh man, I just love walking away from it. Like, like it's always like, it's like I like sitting down in the morning and going, oh, I wonder what would happen if like you did this thing, and then before you know it, like 4 hours have passed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really useful to have the person who's like, listen, whatever we have by 6 is that's what's going out. Like I remember there was one time I was joking with Albert. I can't remember what it was. It can't have been the epic build because that would have been hellacious, but we got to some point where like we made a build and the build was like totally wrecked. And I grabbed the build and put it on USB, and I was like, I used it as like a faux threat all the time. I was like, this is the build that is going to ship. Like, if we don't get a better build in the next like X months, this is the one that's going to go out. And use that as the motivation to not keep making changes.
Right. It's hard. I mean, I want to ask about your personal like. I get in the trap of like wanting to do everything because I love learning. Like I go figure. I hated school my whole life, but I love
Yeah.
learning things. You know,
Yeah.
I've been having such a great time learning new things in the engine, learning how to do new tricks and processes and exploring
All
different
your
avenues.
insane scam machine stuff.
The
That was
scam
awesome.
machine is so fun. If it
Yeah.
works, it's great. um, it it's such a treat, and but I want to I want to ask, like, okay, you know, you see yourself, you know, a month out from the Steam ship or whatever, or whenever, sorry, and how did you personally come to that decision of where it's like, okay, this is not the best use of my time anymore. I need to be focusing on doing Chris Floyd central tasks.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just it's probably it's like deep in my philosophy, but it's always like it sounds so waffly, but
It's
it's
fine.
like you get up in the morning and you go like, what's the most important thing that I need to do? Like, what's the best thing I can do today? Like, what's
Hmm.
gonna when I leave the office, you know, at the end of the day, what like which of these 10,000 levers like could I most influence if I like cranked one of them, right? And so I try to think about things that way always. Um, I mean, as much in video game making as in everything else, I'm just always like, what's the best thing that we could do, right? And I think a big part of it, I think is a prevalent issue is like an having like an ego about what you're doing, and I really, really don't recommend having an ego about your project.
I
Like
agree.
that for me is the key part. Like because if you sit down and like you know honestly like if you can candidly talk to someone else, right? Like you know let's say it's like you and Jake, right? And you're saying, Jake, here's what I want to do. You know, here's my plan for this week or whatever. And he could just say to you, that's totally bullshit and like a massive waste of time. And if you can see that and go, okay, well, wait, why? Because I think it is a good, you know, and you can have that conversation and hash it out. That is so useful, right?
Hmm.
And so I think like eradicating all ego from the creative process can feel like it's at odds with the idea of being creative, right? Because you're like, no, but it's my world. I'm making this thing. It's so
Hmm.
cool. Um, but it's not, right? Like you're in service of that thing. You're not. It's not about you, right? If it's about you, you're doomed. Like I always think, once you start putting your name on your games, like that's when you're. It's too late.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. We talked a little bit before the show about like people who are able to keep that mentality of like not believing they're the greatest
Mm-hmm.
and them doing very very well. So I mean, I definitely see that as something that's held true in my witnessing of the industry.
Yeah, your
Is
anecdotal experience or your lived experience, right? That's
right.
what they.
Well, and totally, there's absolutely been times where I've believed that you know um, there was something genuinely special about what I was doing, and not to say that there isn't. There's something special about every creative project, but I don't think
Right.
that there's ever something more special than anybody else's creative project. You know, it's very easy
It's
to
all about perspective, Justin.
oh, go figure. Thank you, Dr. Glenn Pierce. um,
Yeah. But
it's
it's true. I mean, right? Like your life is the most important things are all the things that you do, and that's just
I
true for
agree. They
everybody.
are the most
But yeah,
important things.
so you have to figure out how to reconcile a world where there's actually other people,
Right.
and it sucks. You've got to do it. So
Um, I want to ask a little bit about like You've had a very, very interesting career in games, even before Superliminal, with
Mm.
the Seattle Indies workspace. Did I get that name right?
Yeah.
It, okay. um, you and the Mega Booth, which is where we met.
Hmm.
Um, you have been surrounded by great creative game
Hmm.
developers for as long as I've known you. Probably you've had access to more brilliant minds than most of the people I've ever known.
Yeah, maybe.
What I want to ask, like, what drew you into? I've never heard the story of like what drew you into games to begin with,
Mm.
and like what was your path in there, and like
What
what do
and
you make
why?
of that experience? Yeah, why though?
What happened again? Um, yeah, I don't know. It's again, it's a whole ginormous mess, but I I really enjoy kind of two favorite things, three favorite things. One thing is helping people. The other thing is being the stupidest person in a room. I love that. I love that feeling. And then the third thing, which is goes really well with those two, is I like I like it when a plan comes together, right? I like I like working together with people towards a common goal and getting stuff done, right? Um, when I joined the Mega Booth, the run up to me becoming part of that was that I've been following it a bit and met different people who had been part of it and who were organizing it and all that kind of thing. And it again was this thing where I just thought this is probably the most important thing that if you were going to work in video games, this is probably what I would do right now. Um, and then when I got to Seattle, I came to Seattle for with PAX obviously is here, so I was here sort of once a year, maybe for like 2 years I think before I moved, and I was so amazed at how. I mean, it's very similar, I think, to Toronto. Like, it's just like thousands and thousands of developers. Like, everyone is doing something, and it's like super creative and awesome. Um, and I don't know if it was the case in Toronto at the time because I guess I don't think I'd been there yet. But in Seattle, it was weird to me that everyone was like so siloed, and just everyone doing their like bedroom thing, right? Like, you're in your back room of the very same house I think I was in
Yep.
4 years ago or something. Um, and that's great, but again, it's really bad for holding yourself up in a weird little space and noodling away forever, right?
I painted
And
the
I think being
walls.
around I think being around people is really good for uh keeping your energy levels up and also giving you constantly good context, right? Because you can look at someone else's screen in passing and go, "Oh man, they are like that looks way better than what I'm doing." And then that can be good, right? It can help you decide to scrap something or to make something even better. Um, so I set up the co-working space for that very same reason. I was tired of working from home. I think I've been working from home for about 3 years at that point, and I missed being around people, and I didn't want to employ people. So I thought, make a co-working space.
Right.
That's exactly what I need,
Good hack.
and it worked great. Yeah, it worked great. And uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, everything in my, I just I like seeing things that have potential, and then watching them execute on that potential. I guess that's kind of
Right.
the summary of my life ethos. It's just I like going like, man, that's so cool. Like I guess the way like to think of it is that like I don't think that like firstly, I don't think to be clear when Justin was talking about the like great minds, I don't think I'm one of those great minds or anything, but I
Maybe.
think that I don't think so. But I think that um how do I put it that like I like it I like to identify with the fact that some of the best, like most useful ideas I've had are like just some of the most rudimentary and boring ideas, right? Like opening a co-working space wasn't like the most radical thing on earth, and it wasn't like anyone hadn't done it before, but I'd never seen one that existed only for the game industry, and then I just did it, right? Because I thought
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to work beside bloggers, so I didn't do
Right.
it.
It. I mean, but I mean, that's kind of like those simple things are kind of essential, and a lot of people, especially in the games industry, I mean, we're talking about a lot of creative people, get very, very wrapped up in pushing things, or I'm gonna redefine a genre. That's my mission
Right.
in life, right? And like,
Easy.
if we don't, pay attention to those simple things, like I've done nothing but try to do crazy things in games, and I haven't really like figured out how to like advance my company or advance my
Hmm.
own creative process,
Mm.
outside of just trying to make more game stuff.
Hmm.
um so I guess I'm giving you a big thumbs up for the playing that role. It's good.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
you
don't
know,
know. I
you,
think
you you don't think it's you don't you're very humble about it, but I think it's really important work actually. Um,
well, good, I guess. I think a lot of people, I don't know, like one of the things I think is really, very indicative of how broken my brain is that almost everyone who does the same kind of work as me, I don't think is necessarily like doing it for the right reasons. There's a lot of people I think who are like very attention seeking,
mm,
and I'm like the total opposite. Like I would rather rather nobody knows. Like I get the satisfaction from watching the thing do well, I don't need nor want anyone to be like he
right.
did it. It was so amazing. And I think that's probably bad. It's probably not great, but it works.
Yeah, I
It
mean,
was
look,
it was certainly a useful thing I will say within the Superliminal team because there was the ego arguments we had, were much more based on like interdisciplinary stuff more so than it was sort of people arguing over like, who gets to put their stamp on stuff. Like it was in that respect really cool. Like everyone we worked with was just like, yeah, let's get the job done. Like they weren't checked out, but they weren't um unnecessarily like, you know, influency, like
mm,
wanting to be like, oh well, it's it has to be this thing because I like that.
right. I, we touched a little bit about this like early.
Mm.
But like I have found that a lot of people who do get into roles like you've been in are very money driven.
Mm.
Like I've previously been invited to some very sketchy co-working spaces that are like, okay, and then we'll get 45% of your IP
Oh
or
yeah,
stuff and stuff like that. And I'm like,
right.
whoa, like, right,
Yeah.
what, like, or these kinds of things, or they're not in it for to see the flower grow,
Mm-hmm.
um and same with like producers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like very frequently get into things, not to see the thing grow, but to own it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess I want to hear your perspective on the business side. People, like, what do you think makes you different in that regard, and what do you think the industry needs more of?
I don't know. I think it's funny. I th- I think a lot of people think I am good at that stuff, but I don't think I'm good at that stuff. But then also I kind of have to look, I kind of have to then be sort of be objective and be like, well, but
But the
we had an
track
Epic
record.
exclusive, right? Like, yeah, like I mean, that wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to do. I don't know. I mean, I think it's just really boring stuff. I think like honesty and humility are like two of the most useful things that you can have, and if you don't have those, like, I mean, you've been knocking around this world just a little bit longer than I have, and you know probably can remember countless people who kind of just like explode and show up for like a year or something, and then they just like are gone, right? Because
Hmm.
they find out they're not getting famous enough fast enough, or like you said, like they're not getting rich enough fast enough, right? Um, and so I think like a little bit of, I don't know, just when people can look at you and go like, oh yeah, you've done all this stuff before, and like you don't blow up. Like that's pretty cool. I don't know. I mean, like with the Epic situation, um, I was fortunate enough to know a guy who worked there who I'd known him previously through like two or three other roles, and I we were, I mean, deathly running out of money to make Superliminal, and Epic were doing their exclusives thing, and I mean they were signing these insane deals with people that were really good. And I thought, well, I'm sure we will not get any of those because we have no track record, and this game is
Mhm.
like famously doomed. So let's see what can happen. I just asked him, like, listen, do you think would this be interesting to you? And he said, yeah, definitely. Like, can we talk tomorrow? And I went, oh yeah, we can. We can talk tomorrow. Actually, free tomorrow. And that was it. I think it took us like because I was upfront with him at the time. I said, "Listen, we really don't have time to screw around. Like we've had people run us in circles, um, and we can't afford like another month of negotiation with someone that doesn't work out." I was like, "Listen, if you just don't think it's going to happen, I won't take it offense. I won't take an offense to it.
Right.
I'll just go look somewhere else, right?" And he was like, "No, no, no." He's like, "We can." Like I think at the time he was like, "Yeah, we've signed agreements usually within about 2 weeks." And I
Right.
was just floored by that. Like don't know what your experience has been, but usually for me it's like 2 or 3 months of just total nonsense. And they were true to their word. Like we sent them a build over. They said, "Okay, this seems pretty cool, but do you think you can actually ship it on time?" And I said, "Yes." I believed the answer was yes. I didn't necessarily know
Yeah.
the answer was yes.
I'm not gonna say
Um,
no.
yeah, but like that was a good thing of like it that really helped because I mean, obviously, firstly, we got a bunch of money that let us then continue to pay the team. Like we were really at that point where it was unclear what was going to happen. Um, but as part of the contract, I was like, listen, give us a little bit of this upfront so we can finish, and don't let us have any other money until the game releases.
Right.
And then that way, we're like under the gun to get it out, and it worked. I mean, we shipped exactly, I think, on the day we promised, or maybe we were off by like a week or something. Um, but it worked, and it's yeah, I don't know. I honestly think I'm really bad at all the business stuff because I think most people who do it are really um, jazz handsy, and I'm kind of not. So
I
I'm
mean,
probably bad at it.
I in terms of like deals that Epic made, I think it worked out well for them. I mean, I bought Superliminal through Epic,
Yeah,
well
a,
before.
a, a lot of people we saw. I mean, because obviously we're monitoring all the social media stuff, but like a lot of people were saying that they were doing the like, okay, I'm gonna get the Epic
Yeah,
launcher so I can play Superliminal, right? And I
it
was like,
it was
cool, all right,
pretty
that's good.
early in my like it was one of the games that got me in on the Epic Store for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think they've done a pretty good job in terms of like signing decent games and
Yeah.
getting, but yours being specifically one of them.
Hmm.
Um, if that hadn't happened,
Mm.
I mean, let's play. We can play the fun hypothetical game, but like if
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
deal had if they had not taken 2 weeks to get a
Yes.
deal, or if there had been no deal at all, what do you think? Or actually, you know what? I mean, we can shelve the hypothetical game.
Uh-huh.
What would you have done?
Um, we would have. I mean, basically, the way we were looking at it at that point was we had we had the like bad shippable version, and it was. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. Um, and I think we used to call it like it was like the 4 out of 10 or 5 out of 10 one. Um, that was the build. Now I remember that was the build that
That's
I
the
was
thumb
like, we
drive.
have this build. Yeah, I still have it. It's on this thumb drive. Um, and I, yeah, so I think, I mean, at the time, we were in like rapid panic. Like, I guess for some backstory for anyone who hasn't followed the colored history of Superliminal, we had a publisher and then we broke up with the publisher, and then we were like kind of totally hosed because we owed the publisher money, but we didn't have any money, and anyone we needed money from had to figure out how they were going to make money on this because someone
Right.
else was going to make money on it first, right? So it was kind of a spooky time. But I mean, we had all the stupid ideas that were just like, I mean, there was a local studio who needed some contract work done, and so Albert and I were trying to do the math of like, well, I think it's like every month of contract work needs to pay for 3 months of developing time. Otherwise, it never maths
Yeah.
out, right? Um,
It becomes really hard math when you're doing that.
yeah,
I've seen a lot of studios struggle with that.
yeah. Plus, there's the whole thing of like, once you take that first contract gig, it gets really hard to go back to making the other stuff because
Hmm.
something is making the team money and the other one is not, right? Um, but yeah, we had lots of random ideas, and then fortunately it all came together. And at the end, I remember Albert said it was going to work out regardless, and my head exploded because I was like, that was not how I felt about it at all. but uh, but yeah, we got there. I mean, I think at that point, the team was very much like, we were very fortunate to have nobody like had to be fired, or like, and no one quit the team. Like, the people we had to finish, the team that we built to finish the game was super small. It was 5 people, and just ran with it. Like, it was I remember sitting down in the Indies Workshop office, and we flew. All the team was in Seattle apart from Ryan, our principal artist, who was in Chicago, and we flew him out. And I was sitting everyone down at the table, and I bought everyone lunch. And I was just like, listen, it is currently, this was June of 2018. And it's like, it's June of 2018. We're going to finish this game by December. And they were like, that's actually impossible. And I was like, it's going to be possible if you all believe it's possible. Like, if we decide to do this, it's going to happen. If you decide not to do it,
Hmm.
we'll find a million ways for it not to work out, right? And we got there. I remember that Christmas, I was at my girlfriend's parents' house in the back office. And, it was December 24th, and it was about 7 p.m. and they were serving dinner, and there was like people over, and I was like just in this like thing, and she came out and she was like, "Hey, like, do you think you're gonna be able to?" Like, she was like, there was no pressure or anything, but I was like, "No, we're done." And then I was like sitting at the table with Slack on my phone, just like still having like a little last minute argument with Albert about something to do with the game. Um, but we got it, and that was the build we had as we were kind of in panic money mode. But it was good because it meant we had like a fully playable thing that. I mean, I think you can ask anyone who saw that build. I think even Will O'Neill saw it, and he was like, "This is fine." Like, it's like it was not great, but it was there, and it showed people that, like, maybe a little bit more money could make a difference, and it did
Hmm.
make sense. It wasn't just like throwing more money into a fire, and so we got there. It's
That's
kind of a boring story.
no. I mean, it's a testament to that mentality of let's just pick and agree and believe in the date. Like, it's
Yeah.
you can make a calendar ahead of time, and
Hmm.
it can make perfect sense. And the only way it stops making sense is slacking, deviation, or adding
Hmm.
shit.
Right.
Right.
It's always the last one. It's always the last one.
Those are the only three things that can really throw off a production goal like that.
Yep.
Um, but so I mean, was it just that like lack of adding things and the laser focus on that 6 month period there that cinched it?
I don't know. I mean, I think it just. I mean, again, I think it really helped because everyone was just committed to it.
Right.
Like, we were like, I wouldn't necessarily say that what we did was like crunching, but we were working like really hard, not 24/7 and not 7 days a week or anything like that. But there was that good feeling of like, the thing I liked about the 6 month nightmare timeline was just, it's definitely doable. Like you said, it's like there's a way to make this happen. but it requires pretty much like 100% output. Like you have to come in every day and make sure that exactly the stuff you're supposed to do definitely does happen, so that the next day you can start the next thing, right?
Mhm.
And or so the next day that the thing you finish can be handed off to someone else to go into somewhere else, right? Um, and I mean, everyone on the team was super amazing and creative, and like Steve, our art director, was just so bananas, crazy, and weird. You should get him on this sometime and talk to him. But he was the kind of guy who was just like, "Oh, I had this idea for something we could do with one of the levels, and so I made it over the weekend." Just like dropped this like insane, like crazy, psychedelic, total nonsense, completely useless for the game thing. But you'd be like, "Man, that's so cool. We can't use any of that."
Delete.
But that gives us a really good idea. So like, let's go do something else. Like it wasn't totally regimented. Like it wasn't like waterfall plan. Isn't that what they call it? Where it's like all in advance. But it definitely was a thing of like uh like you had to get a firm consensus to do anything dramatically new or different, right? It's
Hmm.
basically like we have this much of a level and we could make a new level that could look like this, that could do this, that could do this, but what does all that mean, right? And it's usually you can explore those hypotheticals enough to figure out that there's a very reasonable chance that you will get all the other way out of that. You'll get on the other side of that, and you'll have realized that there's something else you could do, right? And then what's going to rule out that decision? So like you just have to kind of stop ideating. I think that's a word. And just make it. And I think like to an extent it's better in a way, because once you stop trying to figure out how to solve the problems and just solve them, like
Hmm.
your brain is just awesome. Like you go into work in the morning and you go, okay, like I have this whole pile of rubble, and by the end of today, it has to look like this beautiful marble statue.
Right.
How do I do that? Right? I literally, all I have is 8 hours and like this computer, and you do it, right? So it works.
It does.
And I think everyone on the team being very like we didn't have anyone on the team who was like negative or like tearing people down or anything like that. Like
Right.
we
Yeah. Yeah. Good culture is essential.
definitely had like very heated arguments a lot, but always the thing I value a lot about them was the arguments were never about, you and me. They were about like we both really care about this thing,
Hmm.
and how do we make sure this is really great, right? And so like that's a really good place to be arguing with somebody, because you immediately agree with the outcome. You just do not agree at all with what they want to do, right? So then you just sort of figure out who's like where's the kind of compromise that's going to make sense here, or what is the thing that like you've said that does make sense, then what's like where's my head at that's like totally lost, not getting the right ideas. And
It's one of the few times where arguing actually is productive.
yeah, and I mean I think it's super valuable. I mean, Steve, the art director, who's like ex Irrational and worked at Blizzard and all these places and stuff, and he was still saying the other day, he was like, this is my favorite project I've ever worked on. Like he's like, this is the best team. Like it was like is the team the most talented team? Like absolutely definitely not, because I was on it. But um it's it's a testament to the fact that everyone was just like, we think this is going to be really really cool, and we all agree on where that coolness is, and so we're just going to do that. We're just going to like kind of keep. I just think it was Ben Reese used to always talk about going to the fun mines. You just have to like sit there and pick at all the fun until it gets fun. And yeah, it sucks, but it's cool at the end. It's always fun whenever you get those moments where someone plays it and they go, huh, "That's cool," and you're like, "Yes, it is
Neat.
cool." Yeah, feels good.
It does. So I mean, you guys have shipped on Steam now. You've got
Mm,
the next update coming out very shortly.
mm,
Um, as I don't, and again, I don't know about your experience with this, but like as you look forward,
mm-hmm.
um, what is Chris Floyd like at the start of a project?
I don't like the start of the projects.
Because that's this is sort of where I'm at now.
Mm,
I've like kind of begun the journey for my next big project,
mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping to gain some good wisdoms on on how to do better.
Um,
In terms of
my
or
first,
everything.
well, I mean, like again, I think you're plenty experienced. That there's not much I can tell you won't already know. However, let's just do it.
It's not. I
Let's just
mean,
tell you stuff you
there's
already
other
know.
there's other developers in the chat who are also learning and
Yeah.
um,
So I think the way I like to look at it, I've been kind of kicking around uh, a project that I, don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to come together just yet. But, um, you know, obviously everyone starts with a cool idea, right? They're like, oh my God, this would be so awesome. Like whatever that's just story or, mechanic or whatever it's going to be. The thing I think is really important after that is like as you start the process of sort of watching 1,000 movies and listening to it like 1,000 songs and sort of being like, oh, that's cool and like this is the right thing, is also do the act of like, what is it not? Like that was one of the big things I sat down with Albert. I still remember us sitting in the cafe that's that way, um, with my little field notes book, and we just wrote super like I think we wrote it was most because I was referred to as most when it was Museum of Simulation Technology was like in the center of the page, and then it was like okay, it is definitely like this thing, but it's not going to be this thing, right? Like it's like we want it to be funny, like this thing is funny, but we do not want it to be funny like this other thing is funny. That we are in the same vein as, um, and I think that's really beneficial because it's super hard. At least personally, I find it super hard to figure out what is. Well, sorry, I find it hard to decide that something shouldn't necessarily be part of a project. It's super fun just to keep like gathering
mhm.
stuff together, but as soon as you can start kind of holding two things up side by side and going that one and then just like throwing that away, that's amazing because then you can start to like dig into everything else and really like pull it together. And then I mean, who knows what happens after that point because stuff will still change a whole bunch. But I think developing the habit of killing bits and pieces of it as soon as you can is really useful. Not to say they won't come back,
Creating that
but
standard by which you can kill future ideas with.
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, like I think that's probably a good way to look at it. Is like it's like a little snowball that as it gains more and more power, you're able to go.
Right.
It's really painful to go. This is not like we're not it's not going to do that. It's like well, it might work, and it's like no, it's not going to do it. And then when the next situation comes up, you're now hardened to the
Yeah.
idea of turning things down. I guess.
Oh, that's something I haven't done at all. Um,
Mm.
like I definitely have a strong sense of what the new project is,
Hmm.
what it needs, but I have not considered what I don't want it to turn into at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
So create that box, and if it fits in that box, destroy it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, um, and I think you can start very simply with things like,
Hmm.
oh, it's like what's a really good
It's not going
example?
to have a battle pass. No.
Yeah, cool. Like cool. This game will have no microtransactions. It will not be a VR game. It will not be a strategy game.
Hmm.
Like it's not this and these all sound like who like well obviously it's not because it's
Right.
like a first person shooter or whatever, but you're like no 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 no. This is useful because as you start to do all this, you start to cut away these pieces where you can
Right.
start to look at it and go, oh, it's actually also not this. And I kind of thought it was, but now that I think about it, of course it's not. Like it's ridiculous. Like why did I ever think that was the case? Um, and it helps to uh like again the thing I was saying earlier of like it kind of helps to abstract you as a person away from you as the like creative director direction thing on this, right? Like your job is to make sure this thing is awesome, not to make sure it has as much stuff that you think is cool in it, right? Like that's your job as a human being on the project, right? That's what
Right.
a human being does, but the function of your role is to filter hard, right?
Hmm.
And I think the best creative directors are the ones who are just insanely good at that, right? Like they have like a scary ability to say yes and no to stuff where there's feels like there's no like there's not a logical path you can follow on it, right? It's just you get a hunch for it, I think, and then you're amazing at it.
Right. I mean, that is really good advice, and I think it is something that I'm actually gonna give myself time to think about and work on.
Yeah.
Because I have not.
Also,
Uh,
it's fun because you just get to shit on stuff that you don't like. like, like start from the thing it's definitely not. Like, what's the absolute other end of the spectrum, and then
Right.
just start marching towards your project, like just cutting stuff. Feels pretty good.
Yeah. 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 Enjoy. Enjoy talking trash about other. Yeah. All these games did this wrong, and we will never do these things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Like one of my like very broad ethoses and hopes that I like to talk about a lot because I want to make sure that eventually I do fail at this, and then someone can like say, "You said you were never gonna do this."
Uh-huh.
Is like I just want to see if I can go the whole time without ever putting a gun in a game, right? Like, how cool would it be to just never do that? Do I think shooters are bad? Absolutely not. Do I
Right.
think we need more of them? Not sure. Not sure if we do, but we'll see.
I
So
mean, not just like cool for you, but like amazing that the industry has finally evolved to the point where it allows some creators to go their whole
yeah,
career without making a shooter.
yeah. I mean, also because like, how the hell are you going to stand out? Like, how are you ever going to make a shooting game that's better than like whatever Dice is making right now, right? Or like, I mean, you look at. I was talking to Will O'Neill actually about this the other night, but we were playing Apex Legends together and just getting completely destroyed. But that game is incredible, right? Like that
Mhm.
has like it is an amazing player motion controller, like everything, the way you slide down hills when you're running, I'm like it just feels so good. The shooting is amazing, all the guns are great. What are you ever going to add to that? Like unless you have a very radically different approach to the idea of a shooter, like say Super Hot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well now you've got a cool idea, right? Like that's more interesting, right? Like I was watching have you seen Ichiro? You know Ichiro Lamb.
Yeah.
He's doing like a bot driven Twitch show once per
Oh
week.
yeah, 2%.
Yes. And this week's one kind of made me sigh a lot because there was like four different World War II shooting games.
What year is this?
I know. Well, it's like, are we still doing that? Like, who's who are they for? Like, who is playing that game and going like, finally, the Russians? It's like, no, you could already do that. Like, like, and that to me, like, I guess for me, I get my approach to that is, it's very difficult for me to imagine how to improve upon something that is so finely honed
Mm,
as that kind of thing. And so, why not do something which is way less explored because it's way easier to do something weird and interesting, right? Like,
right.
you're almost definitely not going to be the first person who came up with the idea, but you might be the first one who like actually makes it because you're not large enough to have to worry about how do 300 people like live off this project, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah. That's another. I mean, that's a whole separate topic we can get into. But like, I often find myself like we like if I'm not reinventing a genre, is it
Mm-hmm.
worth the time or whatever? And I
Yeah.
throw out a lot of relatively simple small ideas,
Yeah.
um, because they're I have to be the first it has to be so unique and so creative. But I
Yeah.
really do appreciate that you think there's something to be said for being the first one to actually like do it right or do it well, or on a scale that can actually be accomplished rather than
Yeah. Because I mean, it's like, it's tough. All the stuff is tough. So, like, I feel like the easiest thing you can do as a smaller team is find something where you can make a great impact on that, right? Like, again, it's like can five people make an awesome MMO? Like, maybe,
right.
maybe. But are you gonna do super duper well and be sustainable forever on it? Like, probably not. Like, it's probably gonna be a lot of work. And if you ever get to the point where it launches, you've got like a whole new set of work that you've no idea how to do. And if the game does well, that might even be even worse. Like, it's just like there's so many things that are terrifying about that, right? So like, why not pick a fight that you can win?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I look at it. Just fight everything.
Wait a minute. Jake brings up a good point, and
Yeah.
I kind of think is true.
Uh-huh.
like Doggone Golfing, available now on Nintendo Switch as of today, guys. Launch
Hell
day. Hell yeah.
yes.
Um, uh, I think that's a game that, like, are other arcade golf games? Yes. Are there
Hmm.
games with like that cool physics, the way the physics work in that game, the procedural levels, and awesome dog characters? I mean, no.
No, very few.
Um, very few. There's only one, brother. Um, but absolutely no. It's like it's yeah. Pick the things that you can win. I mean, it's I and because so since we've started being on Twitch, we've started getting a lot of like new game designers coming to visit and
Mhm.
asking questions, and the ambition. I gotta applaud it, but sometimes wildly out of place in terms of what's actually feasible. Um,
Yeah.
is it? Do you think it's just if it comes from ignorance? Is it something that we learn over time? What is doable? What is not? Or like how do you know when you look at an idea and say there's no way we can get that done?
This comes back to my earlier point of getting people who are better than you to do the stuff. So like, it's
Right.
often very useful, I find, to talk to someone who knows about shit you don't know anything about, and you go, "Hey, how do you think this is even possible?" Right? And in your head, you're like I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I have no idea how to do it. And then
Hmm.
they go, "Yeah, that's like super easy. Like I can do that in an hour." And you go,
Right.
"Oh, cool. Well, can we do that then?" It's like, "Yeah." And you're like, "Great. Okay." Like I think I'm not I'm not ever going to tell people to not be wildly ambitious and have crazy ideas, but it's also very useful to have a pragmatic frame around those ambitious ideas. Like you should definitely be aware that if your idea is, it's the poster is like a poster in Fargo, I think it is, where it's like all the school of fish and they're swimming this way and there's like one swimming that way and it's like going your own way isn't always necessarily the best idea. Like you might be right, but you also very much might be wrong. So if you're doing something ambitious, that's cool, do it, but recognize it for what it is, right? Like
Hmm.
this is highly likely to fail, right? And then you go and you're pretty freed because you get to go, all right, well, now that I've accepted that this is like an academic exercise more than it is like a business entity or whatever, then you can go do that. And when it happens, like actually saw someone the other day talking about how they did a game. Where did I see this? I can't remember what it was, but they're talking about how they put a game up on Steam and it was free, and then you could optionally buy a DLC for like 69 cents or something. Um,
Nice.
and he was like, and he was like, his sort of first month or whatever study was he had made $2,000 from that, right? And he said, so does this make sense as a business practice? Absolutely not. Like this has been a totally failed endeavor. However, has it been very successful at getting lots and lots and lots of people to play my game? Yes, right. So is that what I wanted? Because if that's what I wanted, then I did win, right? Like no one can ever tell you like, oh, your game didn't make any money, it sucks or whatever. And you're like, yeah, but like 100,000 people played it. Like that's pretty cool, right? If that was
Hmm.
your goal, then great, right? But you could also have the case where you have 100,000 people playing your game, but you're homeless, and then you go, this didn't work. Like my goal was to have a home. Now I have 100,000 players and no home. So
Right.
I think that's less likely, but I always think like firmly defining what your goals are is super useful too.
There's a whole separate whole separate episode about the is it worth just ballooning your player base before a certain point or whatever. But
Yeah,
um
there's the whole thing like of like always release your first game for free was like one going around for a while that I'm still
right.
not convinced it's a terrible idea because it's just like get your name out there.
Hmm.
No one's going to give a shit about it anyway. Like maybe you've made the next best game, but like chances are low. So get it out there, and if it's really cool, you might catch the eye of someone's like, "Wow, you should do this more." Like, "Hey, can I talk to you about doing this more?" And you
Right.
can go, "Yeah, cool," and like, why not, right?
I guess my final question before we wind down, because you talked a lot about getting people who are smarter than you or better than you at that thing to
Mm.
to help you do that thing. How do I, without being a key figure in an organization like Indie Mega Booth or running my own co-op working space, get access to these people, and then also trick them into helping me.
Yeah, tricking is the important part.
It's the real. It's I mean, really, that's the hardest part of it. But
Yeah.
what are the
Um,
secrets?
well, I mean, I guess I would say, perhaps this is like a taking things for granted thing, but like often count I don't count on the like Mega Booth or the Office so much for those things. Like it's
Okay.
more just, but it's also a case of like probably just I've collected lots of it's the Stephen Fry used to say that like people told Stephen Fry he knows a lot of stuff, and he said it's like telling someone who comes back from the beach that they like have a lot of sand. It's like there's way more sand over there. But, um, the I think like being I think you're a pretty inquisitive mind, and I think that tends to help with this stuff. But like a big mistake I see at independent gaming meetups, and I maybe even AAA meetups, but I don't go to those ever. Is people are like so excited to talk about what they're doing
Right.
and not necessarily like asking about things. And I think if you ask people about stuff, you get it's way more useful, right? Like you learn a lot about people and you get around and eventually you're like, I want to do this, audio thing. Okay, actually I know an audio guy and I bet I can ask him and he will either know how to do it or he'll know the right person to do it. Like we got our composer Matt because I pinged a friend of mine who's a sound designer and said, "Hey, we want to get a composer who's good at making cool jazz. Like, do you know anyone who does cool jazz?" And she was like, I weirdly actually know exactly who you should talk to." And it's like, and he's never worked on like a big game before, blah blah blah. He works at like a jazz school in Australia. And I was like, this guy sounds like a risky move, but let's give it a shot. And he was incredible, like super super good. Like, and yeah, I think like I again, it's like that thing of not assuming that you know how to do anything. Just ask someone else. Like out
hmm
your brain is bad. Like just get someone else's brain to do stuff. It knows they probably know better than you do. So
So okay, let's use that exact example then. You've got this teacher at a jazz school, or as Jake is bringing up, someone like Will O'Neill. How do you convince them that your project is worth jumping on? Apart from like, hey, here's a bag of money, like that's obviously
yeah,
going to work, but like especially in a case where maybe you don't have the money, how do you sell them on the faith?
yeah. I mean, I guess in our case, it was easy or easier, I think, because when you saw the game, you were just like, "Oh, this is cool," right? Like it was interesting, and
hmm
it wasn't, hey, here's another like fantasy
So
RPG.
step one, already have a good game.
Yeah, step one, make a really good game, and then step two, ask them if they want to work on the really good game. No, I mean, like I think for me, one of the most important things with finding people to work with, which continues to this day, is like, do they care, right? Because like
hmm
the most dangerous thing in a team is having someone who's kind of checked out because they will like sort of slowly like pulling the tablecloth off the table and then just like everything like when they're bummed out then they tell you someday they're bummed out and you're like, yeah, I guess I'm kind of bummed out, and it's just like it's a virus that is super dangerous for your team. And so like when I was talking to people about working with them, I was, had it spent a lot of time like looking at them, like looking like what's going on in their head and like looking at their eyes, and if they're not like excited about it, then I'd rather not work with them, right? Like because it's like if they're not excited now, they're not going to get excited.
Right.
So
So that's how I don't work with somebody. But how do I get them to work with me if I don't have a bag of money and I don't have
well,
a
if they think the thing is cool,
right?
then like I guess the way I look at it is you shouldn't need to trick them into wanting to work on it. They should
Gotcha.
just want to. And if they don't want to, that's good. Like
Right.
you
Then they're
wanted
not
to
the
know
right.
that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's always the thing of like people who have the fear of rejection, right? Like dating rejection or whatever is like that's the best news you can get because it's ruled out. Then you don't have to worry about it
Right.
anymore. Like just like don't harbor years long crushes. Just be like, hey, do you want to go out sometime? And if they say no, you're like, thank God, okay, now I don't have to worry about it anymore, and just move on to something else, right?
Sound
Um,
advice.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think it's like it shouldn't be hard. Like I think you can tell when someone's like working like when someone's associating with you in any way where it seems like they're just looking to further themselves, right?
Mm.
Um, and I think that like that stench, you get pretty good at sniffing that out. Um, and so beyond that, you just want to find people who don't seem like crooks and have stuff that you can look at and go, yeah, that's like this is exactly the kind of person that I would want to, if I could create a person to work on this game, it would be this person, and they have all this stuff already. So yeah, I mean, we got our art director because a friend of mine had just hired an art director, and I said, listen, can I get your sheet of candidates that you didn't choose? And he was like, yeah, here you go. And I was like, wow, that's exactly what we need. Like this one person. I emailed him and he was like, yeah, this is fucking incredible. I'll start tomorrow. So I think it took us a little longer than that to get it started, but yeah, that was it.
That's rad.
Yeah.
I mean, we should all be so lucky to get good people committed to our projects, to find
Indeed.
projects that we can commit to.
Yes.
And
Death to bad projects
death to bad projects. That is
and bad people.
and bad people. With
Maybe
you.
not death, just like
Just no more
just don't.
games for you. No more projects
Yeah,
for
that's
you.
it.
Yeah.
They just get drip fed bad
To
games.
find the thing they can actually be passionate about.
Yeah.
Darkstone says so still have money.
Yes. Always start with money. That's my big advice.
Just have money, just be rich.
And I will be clear for anyone watching who's like, wow, these guys must be super rich. A, untrue, and B, was even less true when working on the game. But
Yeah, I don't want to go over too much about like the like I had a really great episode with Chase Bethia, who's a game composer. We talked a while back about what do you want to how do you get an audio person if you don't have money on your project? And he brought up this is a genius idea, but skill bartering is something that like I had never even considered. It's like he's like, I've done work for people and they've done work for me, and there has been no money exchanged whatsoever. It's like we both have no money, but we both have a lot of talent. Let's just trade talent, and like
yeah,
that's a great way of sidestepping the money problem.
there are two people in my office who have been in tandem working on each other's projects because one is a 3D artist and the other one is an engineer, and they're both just like, okay, flip about for a week and go back. And it was crazy. Like once they both started doing that, both of their projects got like really good really fast.
Right.
It was cool. Yeah, and I think there's an interesting thing. I mean, again, all of this stuff is predicated on, and I think you should always put high priority on it, that you find good people, like people who are like honest, and when they say they're going to do a thing, they do it. Like it's that whole joke you hear about like 95% of success is just showing up is like crazily true. Like just when if you meet someone and you know that when they say they'll do something, they'll actually do it. It's like super exciting.
Right.
It should be the norm, right? But like I think when you're doing a skill barter, that's kind of handy because you can say, because I mean, someone takes the first bet, right, where they go, okay, I'll work for you for free, and hopefully you're going to do this back to me in return. And then you're incentivized to do kind of the most impressive work that you can, so that when they see it, they go, "Oh no, this is really good!" Like now I have to do really good stuff back, right?
Would have been easier to take out a loan. God damn it.
Yeah, and and I think that's a good thing because again, that may help kind of raise both of your projects. And I mean, in the case of my two friends who are doing that, it was a really really crazy chance. It was over the course of 2 months. I think the game's just skyrocketed.
That's really good. I had not heard such a strong example of this concept. This concept is completely new to me. I hadn't been like
that term for it.
Use money and that's it. But like, I so frequently don't have money. Tragically, I also have no talents. But but
luckily you've got the scam machine. So
I got the scam machine. The scam machine is all I need in my life. Bruh. Chris, it has been such a blast getting to catch up with you. Do you want to tell people about the update? Do you want to say
Sure. If you're out there and you haven't played Superliminal already, please go get it on Steam. And if you're not sure about getting it, you can wait until tomorrow morning at about 10 a.m. PST, guaranteed to run late because we're mega panicking right now. Um, but we're about to launch an incredibly cool new thing for the game that people might get to enjoy. If you like stuff, maybe you could like this too. I don't know.
Best fish. I think most of our chat loves the game already.
Great. You're all good people then.
They are good people. Dude, thank you so much. Thank you for the game. As the chat says, yes, thank you for the game. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being my friend.
Yeah.
And it's good to see you. I'm gonna
Good to see
find
you
out.
too.
I'm gonna throw it on the thanks for watching. I'll send you guys somewhere cool on Twitch. I don't know where yet. And then
Do it.
someone's playing ASM. Perfect timing. They're just starting
Awesome.
ASM. And we'll
Everyone who asked questions, by the way, we didn't really get to all of them, but someone asked about what we think about Modern Doom, and my answer
oh
is it's real good.
yeah,
That's it.
I love Modern Doom. I'm currently running through the DLC, which is super hard.
Mm, yeah.
Um, yes. Anyway, guys, I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll keep working on more games because it's what we do here. All right. Bye.
Bye, everybody.